My top 5 favourite Plague Tale Requiem chapters. That is the topic of today's video. It was a hard one to nail down. So many good chapters. I love this game. They've just done a really good job with it. Just going to drop right now a spoiler warning. We will be talking in depth about the chapters, so if you haven't played the game, this is your chance to leave now so you don't ruin it for yourself. Anyway, let's jump into the list. Coming in at number 5, we have Chapter 1, Under a New Sun. And what an absolute awesome start to the game. It starts very similar to the first game, for those of you who've played it, with, a very peaceful start. Hugo and Amicia, and even Lucas are out enjoying some time, and for once actually getting to act their age without any worries in the world. But even though it's good seeing the characters actually get to enjoy their life to some degree, not constantly be filled with murder, you as the player, you know that this is just the start of the game. So it's going to go crazy, and very soon. And the game definitely delivers. Goes from them playing some games, meeting a new kid, to deciding to explore some ruins, and then instantly they fall into an area where people are murdering trespassers who they think are coming to steal their food and whatnot. And once again, you're in the struggle of having to survive. And the game just does such a good job. You can see this is someone's home, but it's definitely not somewhere you would want to be for any period of time. And as you progress, you go through, and next thing you know, you run into some trouble trying to protect the kid that you met earlier, and the Amicia is going to be killed. But even though they don't show it, Hugo steps in with the rats and saves his sister. And from there, it cuts to black, and later on, you're back in the cart with the rest of your family. You've met back up with your mother and with Lucas, and you run into people from the farm. And once again, it just goes into complete chaos. Amicia has to kill, and she kills a lot of people, but eventually, they manage to make it to safety. And that's the end of the first chapter. It's done perfect. It draws you into the game and introduces the characters. It's one of my favourite ones. I just love the way they've done it. And coming in at number 4 is Chapter 14, Healing Our Wounds. Now, moving on to one of the shortest chapters in the game. Healing Our Wounds sees our characters at what can be considered their lowest point. Their bodies are broken. Hugo and Amicia just watch their mother die. Hugo's mind is teetering right on the edge. He's about to snap. Arnold's almost dead. Sophia's seen untold horrors. But even so, even with all this, Amicia still has, hope and an idea that maybe they can actually live a peaceful life. But it just seems like no matter how much they try, it can't happen. With the Count chasing them after leaving his island, both wanting revenge for the death of his wife and still believing in her psychotic idea that Hugo is some sort of saviour. And with him appearing, doesn't take very long before you once again have to fight for your life. Amicia has to kill a bunch of people again, but even then it's not enough. Can't save Sophia's ship. Hugo gets taken by the Count, and Amicia seemingly gets killed after being hit with an arrow. And seeing this, believing that Amicia is dead, is what finally tips Hugo over the edge. It finally sets the macula in full effect and sets the final events of the game going. In just a short amount of time, around 15 minutes to do this chapter, they've just managed to show you and advance the story so much. It's one of the best. Absolutely love it. Coming in at number 3 is Chapter 7, Felons. This chapter comes with the introduction of a couple of new side characters. And I'm generally someone who believes, side characters can definitely make or break a game. If they're not interesting, then you just don't care. And it can ruin the experience. But this game does a good job, After seeing Hugo and Amicia split from their mother and Lucas, believing that this is the only way to see Hugo's dream come real, of the island with the bird and the tree in the centre. They decided to go out on their own, but Amicia's been injured. They've had to fight their way through countless amount of people, and eventually they meet up with Arnold, who just happens to be the mercenary leader that injured Amicia in the first place. But after seeing Hugo use the rats, he wants to join up with them. He's willing to protect them, to use Hugo for his own means in the end. And the game done a very good job of showing him as the type of person who is doing all the right things, protecting these kids, just obviously for the wrong reasons. And he also happens to be the person that introduces them to Sophia, the other new character who journeys with them. And after having Amicia save her life, she definitely forms a really good bond with them. And despite all the craziness she sees throughout the game, she sticks with them. And as far as I can tell, she stays with Amicia for the rest of her life. And it's the introduction of these new characters that just make this as one of my favourite chapters. That's why it comes in at the number 3 spot. Coming in at number 2, we have Chapter 11, The Cradle of Centuries, and Holy Rats. Like, this whole game, they really turned up the number of rats, and this is just another chapter that somehow manages to exceed your expectation of how many rats can fit into one place. Sees the characters following along on the trail of the previous protector and macula carrier, and it takes them to an underground area once owned by the Order. And it is very depressing. You progress through an underground area, nearly die multiple times, come across the body of the previous protector who was just trying to get to her carrier, trying to do everything in her power to protect him, but the Order wouldn't allow it. And although she killed a lot of them, fought her way for as much as she possibly could, in the end she just couldn't get to the carrier and she died. And then, after proceeding down some stairs, you come across the carrier himself, who was chained up, left to die. And he succumbed to the macula. He just let the rats take over. And it is a horrible sight. And this is what makes Hugo begin to lose his mind, to think that there's no hope. And even Amicia, she's in despair at first, but no matter how much is thrown at her, she's always willing to try more, to try to survive. But it just seems like Hugo, he might be done. And with Hugo beginning to lose his mind and give in, the macula takes over. And once again, you're running from your life by just an unbelievable amount of rats. And just the fact that they showed, previous carriers, what went wrong to some degree. It's just a good way to continue the story, to show that this is what could happen, and to drive the story forward, giving the characters more motivation to try and find a solution. And that's why it comes in at number 2 on this list for me. And finally, coming in at number 1, going to cheat a little bit with this one, and give it to the final 2 chapters of the game. Chapter 16, King Hugo, and Chapter 17, The Legacy of the Durun Family. Chapter 17, there's not too much to it. It just shows Amicia in her life after everything that's happened and what she plans to do, how she can pass on information about everything that has happened for the next carrier and protector to come along. But it's Chapter 16, King Hugo, that is the actual climax of the game and everything that has happened. It sees a city being devastated by Hugo, who's finally given in to the macula after seeing what he believes is Amicia's death, not knowing that she's still alive, and trying everything she can to get him. And it sees Hugo sitting in what seems to be an ocean of rats, seemingly pulsate out from him like waves. And it's this that Lucas, Amicia, and Sophia have to try and fight their way through. And ultimately, in the end, only Amicia is successful in getting through to an area where she attempts to find Hugo. And she seemingly has these, you could say they're vision-like occurrences that give her a perspective of what she needs to do. That even though she's the protector and this is her little brother and she wants to do everything she can for him, ultimately she can't. She has to end this horror, which unfortunately comes with ending Hugo. And through these somewhat visions, you could say, yeah, she finds that he accepts this, that he feels like it's the best way going forward. Even though he's going to die at the hands of his sister, doesn't change how he feels about her. He loves her, cares about her. And it's just a great climax to the game. You know, good ending, even though it's sad seeing Hugo die. But, like I said, going into chapter 17, Amicia gets the opportunity to continue living, and she knows that eventually the macula will come back. So she goes out on a journey with Sophia to leave information for those to come. And that's it. That's the end of the game. I just love the way they done it. It's sad, but it's a great ending to a great game. And that's it. That's my top 5 favourite A Plague Tale Requiem chapters. Let me know down in the comments what your favourites were, what you thought of the game, and I hope to see everyone in the next video. Setting up the next adventure, maybe? Looking like a bit more of a modern day adventure.